and YouTube. Today I wanted to make a video about the 400-year prophecy. And if you read the Bible like you should, then you know what the 400-year prophecy is. If you don't read the Bible, but you're a spiritual person or a religious person and don't know what the 400-year prophecy is, then I feel like something's wrong. But the 400-year prophecy is basically the children of the Most High God, or God's chosen people, the children of Israel, the children of Jacob, were put under a curse. And if you read the Bible, then you know that Deuteronomy, I believe Deuteronomy chapter 28, tells you of the curses that the Most High put on Israel. So Genesis 15 also tells of the curse that the Most High put on Israel for backsliding and for congregating with Gentiles and also worshiping other gods or idols. So the 400-year prophecy is basically the Most High would bring a people to Israel, the people of Israel, the 12 tribes, and they would take them into captivity, and they would be oppressed and in captivity for 400 years. So if you believe that not only black people in America, but black people across the world in different countries, and not only black people, but Native Americans and Latinos or South Americans or whatever, if you believe that they are the children of Israel, then you know that slavery began. Well, most people believe that the only people of Israel, the only true Hebrews, are black people because of what we've been through as long as we've been in America, what our ancestors have been through, and what we still go through today. So with that being said, as far as we know, slavery began in 1619. They try to put a specific date on it. They say August 20th, 1619, which would make 400 years August 20th, 2019. So what does that mean? After 400 years, it's believed that the time of the Gentiles will be up. And the time of the Gentiles is basically the time allotted to them to oppress us and to trodden us down underfoot, which is basically for them to have their foot on our necks for 400 years because we went against the Most High God. We went against the Most High. We worshipped other gods. We worshipped idols. And we congregated with Gentiles. So what does that mean? What does 400 years have to do with what we're going through now and what we're about to go through? Well, if you believe that 400 years means that the time of the Gentiles is up, then that means there's about to be a major shift change within the world. What I mean by a shift change is a spiritual and a physical change. So in the book of Revelations and through the prophets in the Bible, it's always been told that after 400 years, well, it never specifically said after 400 years, but it always tells of a time where the Most High will come back and redeem his people, the chosen people, the elect. And it's believed that that time would be after the 400-year prophecy was up. So, in order for God, the Most High, to redeem his chosen, his elect, he would have to judge those that he put over us, those that he allowed to take us into captivity, basically. And the thing about it is that they were allowed to take us into captivity, but if you read the book of Enoch, they actually did more than what they were supposed to do. They were only allowed to kill a certain number of people, to take a certain number of people into captivity, to only do this, to only do that. And the Most High knew that they weren't going to uphold their part of the bargain. So it's basically, you didn't hold up to your end of the bargain, so now you have to be judged for everything that you've done in the last 400 years. That's why now it seems like for the past few years, probably past 10 years, maybe longer, it's been feeling like something is wrong in the atmosphere. Something is going on. Something negative is about to take place. And a lot of people feel out of place now, especially in America. People feel like America is going to hell, which it is. America has been going to hell for a long time. They try to say one nation under God, but yet this is the United States, where if a person is seeking refuge, I was going to say if a person is seeking religious refuge, which back in the day, that's supposedly what people were doing. They came to America to seek asylum, religious asylum. Supposedly the Christians came to America to seek religious asylum because they were being oppressed in Europe and in other countries, I guess. So America is supposed to be a place where people from different countries and different continents are supposed to be able to come and practice freedom. But they always try to say this is one nation under God. But not every person in America, every single person in America worships the same God. And one nation under God, but what God is this nation under? They try to get you to believe that America is a Christian nation, but it's not. America has always been under the control of the synagogue of Satan, which is basically, if you read the Bible, you know that the synagogue of Satan are Jewish people, or those that say they are Jews and are not. So I don't like to associate Hebrews with Jews. I try to keep those two words separate. I try to make it understandable that Hebrews and Jews are two separate entities, two separate peoples. Hebrews are the true chosen people of the Most High. They are the chosen elect of the Most High. They have been on this planet for millions of years. If you go to any continent in the world, you will find that black people, so-called African Americans, have been on every continent in almost every country of the world. Which the same could be said about the Hebrews. And I remember when I first started reading the Bible and I was reading about the Hebrews, and in the Bible, they were always trodden down underfoot. They were always taken into captivity because they transgressed the Most High, but the Most High always redeemed them. And my first thought when I was reading this was that this sounds like black people. No other people came to mind except black people, because in the Bible it was alluded to that it seemed like these people had become used to oppression. They had been oppressed for so many years on and off that that's what they were used to. And they had gotten comfortable being oppressed. So to me, it sounded like black people. Because what other people has been oppressed for so long, for thousands of years, and haven't risen up yet? I mean, I don't want to call us black people, but the black people in America, our ancestors were oppressed for thousands of years. If you look at places like Haiti, they overthrew the French rule. Now they're in poverty. If you look at other places like Jamaica and places of that nature that overthrew the ruling majority, that overcame oppression, they rose up. They revolted. But the black people in America are so blinded, so asleep. They are so comfortable with being told what to do, how to think, how to act. They're so comfortable with being fed bullshit, and they're so used to it being the norm that anything outside of that box, they feel uncomfortable. They feel like it's either insane or it's not credible. If it's not somebody spoon feeding it to them. And the crazy thing is, how can you rely on somebody that's oppressed you for oppressed your people for thousands of years, and still to this day do it under the guise of laws, under the guise of, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. But for the longest, the black people in America were treated as second-class citizens. Not even second-class citizens. They weren't even considered humans. I believe they were considered like 1/3 of a human or something. So how can you rely on somebody to spoon feed you information and not think to yourself, maybe they're feeding me poison? It's crazy because we don't really know anything about our history. We only know what they've told us about our history. And our history to them starts with slavery. They don't even teach our history in schools. And if they do teach history, they teach African American history, which not all black people in America came from Africa. Some black people in America, maybe even majority of the black people in America, came from the Native Americans. And I'm not talking about the people that they call Indians that were here, or that they say was here before us, before the first slave ships came. I'm talking about real dark-skinned people that were here in the Americas before a ship set sail with slaves, African slaves on it, and came to these shores, came to the coastlines of America. Those are the people that we come from. If you do your research, all you have to do is type in on Google the 5 civilized tribes. And if you search the 5 civilized tribes, if you go to Wikipedia, there's a picture of one person from each tribe, and each of those people have dark skin. They look like black people. They don't look like red Indians in any of those pictures. And if you do your research, they are called the 5 civilized tribes because those were the most civilized tribes to the Europeans that first came to America. All the other tribes were savages. They were cutting the scalps off of people. They were decapitating people. They were eating people. But these 5 tribes were the most civilized. So, how can they teach you a history of some people that came from Africa when your people didn't even come from Africa? Your people may have not even started here in America. It's not even known where our people originated from. They try to say Africa is the cradle of civilization, which it should be a known fact by now that thousands and millions of years ago, supposedly, when the Bible was created, even before the Bible was created, that the world was all one landmass called Pangea. The continents were all one landmass. And this is supposed to be before the flood in the book of Genesis with Noah. So how can Africa be the cradle of civilization when there wasn't an Africa yet? And people will argue with you up and down, oh, we're African, we're from Africa. Our ancestors are African. But if thousands and millions of years ago, the world was all one landmass, there was no such thing as Africa. There was no such thing as Asia. There was no such thing as North America, South America, Australia, Europe, none of that. They all went by one name, Pangea, and that is a disputed fact. It's not really known what it was called back then. It's not really known if they had different countries back then. They had different cities. I could say with almost 100% certainty that they had different cities, because why wouldn't you? Why would everybody in the world live in one city? And the thing about it is, I'm trying not to make run-on sentences. I'm sorry. But the thing about it is, these continents are huge from a human's perspective. So for them to all be one landmass at one time, it would be almost idiotic for them all to live in one city and not be spread apart. But in the book of Genesis, it's told to us that the Hebrews and the Gentiles were separated. They were not meant to mingle. They weren't meant to have contact with each other. But after a while, the Hebrews and the Gentiles basically almost had no other choice but to mingle with each other. After the flood of Noah, things were so chaotic in that time that they had no choice but to mingle with each other. And it tells you that there were Nephilim on the earth even then. There were Nephilim on the earth before then, and there were Nephilim on the earth after then. So, how could the Hebrews get away from the Gentiles in such a chaotic time where supposedly there was a flood that wiped out a huge population of the earth? And caused what they call continental drift, which is how we got the continents that we live on today. So after the floods of Noah, there's basically a time period where the Hebrews are mingled in with the Gentiles. And in doing so, they stop worshiping the Most High. They stop having faith in the Most High as they should. They start believing more and more of what the Gentiles were feeding them. They started worshiping the Gentile idols and the Gentile gods. And to this day, we still do that, because in the Bible, there is more than one God being portrayed. There are symbolisms of different gods in the Bible, not just one. Even in the instance of, or in the persona of Jesus of Nazareth, he is portrayed as multiple gods, having the attributes of multiple gods, multiple Greek deities, multiple Roman deities. So if you break down the name Jesus, they didn't use the word J thousands of years. I mean, they didn't use the letter J thousands of years ago. So the only two letters that it could have been is Y or Z. And even with J, not many countries pronounce it J or J. They pronounce it as H. So even if it's spelled Jesus, they say Jesus. The S isn't even a sound, it's a Z sound. It's a Z. So they pronounce it Jesus, not Jesus. And if you take the hey off, it's just Zeus, which is a Greek god. He's supposed to be the king of the Greek gods, the father of the Greek gods, the father of the gods of Olympus, the All-Father, Father God. So even if you use the Y, it's Jesus. Do you get what I'm saying? It's gonna always be Zeus. It's never Jesus, it's Zeus. So they have you worshiping a man called Jesus, but in actuality, you're worshiping Zeus. It's either Jesus or Jesus. And Jesus just basically means Hail Zeus, just like Jesus means Hail Zeus. Which, if you say the name Jesus, you're basically saying Hail Zeus. If you pray in the name of Jesus, you're praying to Zeus, the Greek god Zeus, which is the god of lightning and thunder, amongst other things. So Christians are so dogmatic, and if you look across America, a large majority of the black people in America were brought up on Christianity. Throughout their generations, they were taught such dogmatic theology about Christianity that they taught it to their children and their children's children and their children's children's children. So you then get such devoted families, such dogmatic in the faith families, that if you say anything that contradicts what they were taught throughout the generations, it sounds absurd to them. It sounds crazy. It sounds demonic. It sounds devilish. It sounds satanic to them. It sounds insane. You're going to hell. You must worship the devil. You must be an atheist. Because back in slavery days, and I'm not talking about African slavery, I'm talking about the American genocide that took place. They brought the Bible with their own interpretations. They brought the revised Bibles with their own scriptures inside. They mixed the truth with lies, and then they beat it into the Native Americans, the indigenous Americans, the indigenous people. They beat it into their heads until they worship the same idols that the Europeans worshipped. And they were allowed to do this for 400 years. And then they taught you that your history begins in Africa with slavery. So there has been an awakening in the true Hebrews, the true chosen elect of the Most High. There has been an awakening. For thousands of years, our people have woken up. I'm going to say with the start of the Underground Railroad. If you listen to some of those songs that they sung, yeah, they have a different meaning. They were guidelines that the slaves had to follow to get to freedom. They were coordinates and things of that nature hidden inside the verses of the songs to help the slaves get to freedom. But it's not just a physical freedom that they are singing about. It's also a spiritual freedom that they're singing about. You have to look at it from a metaphysical standpoint. If you wake up and you understand that you are part of God's chosen elect and you were never meant to be here, from a physical standpoint or a spiritual standpoint, and your goal is to wake up your brothers and sisters, then you're going to put it into a way that they can understand, which our people are the most musically adept people on the planet. There can't be said that black people don't love music. It can't be said that black people don't love music. Black people love music from the verses, the words, the instruments, the frequencies. Black people love every aspect of music. Black people created some of the most famous music on the planet. So this is supposed to be a way that our people can grasp and comprehend the spiritual aspects of our captivity and our history. If you listen to a lot of the songs that were written back in the day and that were produced back in the day, if you listen to the lyrics of those songs, they are very metaphysical. They speak on a very spiritual standpoint, a very high spiritual standpoint. The verses always drop little hints like, We are stars. We were gods. We were kings. We were queens. And we're oppressed. Like, if you just really listen to the lyrics of these songs, they drop knowledge. They drop jewels. They drop truth. They bring truth to the people. And the thing about it is, they don't want us to be in the truth. They don't want us to have more knowledge than they do. They want us to stay asleep. They want to be able to spoon feed us their bullshit, their truth, which in actuality is a lie. So we can stay asleep, so we can stay oppressed. But the Most High said, you will only be oppressed for 400 years, and then I will tell my people to come out of there. I will tell my people to come out from congregating with the Gentiles. Come out from being oppressed. And their biggest fear is that with the 400 years coming to a close, coming to an end, that more than just a handful of Hebrews or God's chosen elect, the Most High's chosen elect, will become awake and aware to the fact that we're not meant to be here and that we'll revolt. Their biggest fear is the African American or the black people revolution. Everything that they do, every law that they make is against minorities, because they believe that one day the minorities will revolt against the majority, which is those in power. So only time will tell what's about to happen with the 400-year prophecy ending in 2 days. But from a spiritual standpoint, from a spiritual aspect, you can feel that there's about to be a major change within the world. That there's about to be a major shift change within our people, which is God's chosen elect, and the powers that be within the world. So I'm going to end with that, and hopefully I'll be able to expand on what I talked about.